What kind of belt do you want for appendix carry? Let's talk about it. There are three features that you need for an appendix carry belt. Number one, you need it to be micro adjustable. The kind of belt that has the traditional buckle and hole style here, not good because you can only adjust it in increments. Something like a Nex belt would work great, or the much more common hook and loop, so-called Velcro. That's the first thing, so micro adjustability. The second thing, you don't want a large buckle up front like this Aries Gear Aegis. Great belt, but it's really designed for outside the waistband, not inside the waistband. So you want a belt that you can easily put the buckle off to the side, and this buckle is so big that even then it's less than ideal. The third thing that you want is you want a belt that is fairly thin this way and fairly flexible. Don't listen to the Gunternet when they tell you that all belts should be super thick and sturdy. For an appendix carry, that just leads to back pain and poor concealment. I end up with basically a tactical shelf kind of jutting out to the front past the gun if I have something that's super thick like that. So you want something flexible this way, and yet you want it fairly rigid this way. So it's going to support all the weight, and it will kind of settle down in the front just a touch. That's to be expected, but you don't want it to just buckle outwards like a Walmart leather work belt would do. So let me give you a quick rundown of what I've used and what has worked. Obviously the Aries Gear Aegis does not. The Magpul Tejas is less than ideal for a couple of reasons I already mentioned. These holes aren't too far apart, so they're not terrible, but they're also not great. The belt is also quite thick, leads to a little more bulk up front than I like, and the buckle doesn't easily situate off to the side. So I've used it, and it kind of works, but it's not ideal, and it's also somewhat more expensive. It is 85 bucks retail. You can find them a little cheaper than that, but it's more expensive than some of the other options, and it doesn't work as well. So pass. My first real gun belt at the behest of the Gunternet was this brown coat tactical belt, and I believe they start at 65. They go up from there. They do have some great color options and some embroidery options, which I did here. But the big downside, the Cobra buckle, you have to take the Velcro apart, thread it through your pants, and then buckle it together, and that's a real hassle, whereas with other belts you don't. It's also a little bit more expensive. Solid belt, but it's also too stiff this way. Good outside the waistband, not a great appendix carry belt, so pass. Moving on to the Warfighter A-frame. This is the older style metal buckle. I believe they've moved to a plastic one. However, they have not fixed the big problem with this belt, and that is that you can see how this is fairly stiff. It is micro adjustable technically, but it doesn't work well because you have to take it apart, and then as you move it just a little bit, you try to rebend it, it wants to stay open, and that doesn't hide well. And this part is the part that sits up front, so you can see why that's less than ideal. Basically, this is a set it and forget it type of deal. However, with appendix carry, you can't set it and forget it. Depending on, look, Thanksgiving Day, I eat a lot more. I need to let my belt out of touch. Or if I'm taking a long trip, going to be driving, I can loosen that just a little bit because I don't need the same level of concealment, and it eases up a lot on my low back. So what I do like, a little bit better than those, the Warfighter A-frame is 49 bucks, a little less expensive than some of the other options, but again, it just doesn't work at all, so pass. This one by the Wilderness, I believe they used to be Wilderness Tactical, is their Instructor belt, and giant buckle, less than ideal. It is nice and stiff this way. It's very stiff, in fact. It's a great outside the waistband belt, but I don't think it's a great inside the waistband belt. It's really too stiff. This one is a 5-stitch, which costs you an extra $5. For outside the waistband, it's definitely worth it. It's also 1 3/4 top to bottom, and I like 1.5 inches for the appendix carry specifically. So I would pass on that one as well. Next one up is the Wilderness Frequent Flyer. Great little belt, quite reasonable at $42. It's an extra $5. This one is a 3-stitch. It's an extra $5 for the 5-stitch. I do like a 5-stitch in the 1.5 inch. This one is quite flexible. I would actually like it to be a little bit less flexible. I find that guys with a little bit bigger stomach up front, where the gun is kind of hiding down below it, they like that extra flexibility. But my gut, whoops, I've got the dad bod here. My gut actually sticks out the most, and I simply can't bring my pants up enough to kind of ride that. I'm breaking the 300th parallel rule, and all I can do is kind of crank down my belt a little bit, mash the whole gun into that gut, and hide it. So I like something thin, but also stiff enough to kind of help me hide that. Just kind of smooth out the whole thing. I just accept the fact that I look a little bit fluffy in the midsection when I'm carrying. Last belt, this one is actually my favorite. This is by the Wilderness. It's their low pro model. It is the 5-stitch, so it's a little bit stiffer this way, but it's not quite as flexible as that Frequent Flyer, but that's only because the stitching and not any other design. The only design difference is the buckle, and that is slightly lower profile. Whenever you're carrying appendix, you want to stick that buckle off to the side, even on something low profile like this. This one is my favorite, and it's the one I recommend. It's also the cheapest. It is $42 for the 3-stitch and $47 for the 5-stitch. So this is the one I recommend. I know I've missed several belts. If you guys think I've missed something crucial, let me know in the comments, okay? If you've learned something, drop a comment. If you think I missed something huge, feel free to tell me I'm an idiot.